Okay, I'm going to start the school board workshop for December 10th, 2019.
Is this my computer?
Pardon us for our technical difficulties and our lateness. We were a little bit late today because we had an executive session a little bit earlier about safety and security. But with that, it looks like we have almost all our board members in attendance. And as I said, that we just finished our meeting, so there could be members still upstairs. But I will start with public comment. Can you tell?
I'm not logged in
He's
yet.
not logged in. I only have one, but
I can't log in.
I don't
Who do you
know.
have? Glenn?
Desiree is who I have. I don't think this is right because this is saying the wrong. Okay. Something is funky with the computer because it's saying different things around the agenda on my computer than what is even on this paper. So, see, it's saying I have this, and it's saying this is the public comment. Wow. And he can't log
And
in.
I can't even get in. I mean, it's,
And I don't think
it's
he can
asking for a
either.
server, so.
So this is fun.
Easy agenda.
But it's,
I mean, I logged in.
but it's, yeah, they did that on purpose, right? But
Public comment?
public comment, and she says, Mr. Giblina is your only speaker.
Glenn, come on up. Mr. Gibellina, come on up.
Then you have to read the stuff, though.
Maybe I will find it, so let's just find out.
We just got in the habit of doing that
It's-
after July.
Kathy, remember the 3-minute clock.
All right, so, for the record, my name is Glenn Giblina, community activist, taxpayer, and voter. So as I was looking over these, of course, public comment comes in question. So as I look around the state at other school boards, municipalities, and other organizations that allow the public to speak, I believe that it is an unfair advantage to the citizens of this county that may not have access to a computer. I think the electronic filing, in my opinion, can be challenged. And if it is a policy, it's a bad policy. No matter what public forum I go into, after all the public comments are done, the chair always opens it up to the public. People can be running late, they forgot to sign in on the card, they forgot to electronically do it. The public, the taxpayer, should be allowed to speak at a public comment session, regardless if they have a card filled out, electronically filled out. If they show up, they should believe to speak. And I think that's going to be a constitutional challenge, because if I've asked for a legal opinion from the AG, we'll find out what happens. But I really believe it's a disservice to the taxpayers. If they want to walk in here and just sit in and listen, and they want to make a public comment, they're entitled to do so. You know, at the end of the day, we pay your salaries. We own all the buildings. You know, it's our money. And it should be our opinion. We want to step up to the podium and talk. And the other issue is the overhead. If people, citizens, have documents they want to show up on the screen and out to the public and to you, if I want to do it now, I got to print out 10 copies, and hopefully you'll get it. It's a pain in the ass. I shouldn't have to do that.
Language.
Okay, well, that isn't a dictionary. So I think the overhead projection, I've asked for it before. Every municipality and other school districts do it. It's not a big deal. Or at the city of Bradenton, they bring out a cart and they got an overhead and it's hooked up to the computer and it's done. And after the meeting, they roll it off. So I would encourage this board to, one, rethink their public comment as far as the mandatory electronic is. And I think you need to make it more accessible to all the folks that come here, all the taxpayers and voters. And I think the overhead is I mean, why don't we have an overhead? Are you afraid of what the public might put down there and say, there's a problem with this, I want to address this? And it's really a disservice to the folks that are watching TV, and it's a disservice to the folks that are in here that can't see. I'm sitting up here like this, I want to show you this. Nobody sees it. You can't even read this. Thank you.
Excellent. I believe, that was it for public comment. I don't see anybody else. Okay, that concludes public comment.
Okay, so let's move forward.
Thank you, Michelle.
Madam Chairman, I apologize for being late, and to Mr. Gibolina, I got caught in traffic
On the elevator?
on the elevator, yes.
Um,
You know how they are.
I'm not sure you want to really admit that.
Okay.
Okay, so our workshop today is really, as I saw it, to ensure that we all are on the same page, we all have a common language and agree on how we'd like to see our board meetings run. Also to talk about our board bylaws, and I've noticed some things in our board bylaws, so I hope everyone looked through them. And also to talk about some of the security and safety features that have been changed in the last few months, and to talk about the rules that have been put in place, the procedures that have been put in place. I don't have a preference in which order we go in. I suppose. Okay, thank you. It probably would be most beneficial if we started with our idea of what would be an effective board meeting, and that might run down to whether we want to use a speaker button, whether we want to raise our hands, whether we want to vote on the computer, whether we want to vote orally. You know, we have this great tool, and I've seen in the last 3 years that I've been here, it used sometimes and not used sometimes, and I think that for us to be most effective, we need to be consistent. This is, for me, about consistency and making sure that we all agree on however we're going to use these things, agree on what we want to call each other, whether we want to be Mr., Mrs., Dr., Reverend, board member, all of those types of things, so that we're all on the same page with all of that. I would like to talk about when to pull an item. If you'd like to pull an item, what's a deadline for that, so that it's reasonable to the staff that have to pull that item or be prepared. If you want to add something to the agenda and a deadline for that as well. You know, I know there was always the Bob Gauze rules, who I'm warming his seat for him. But he always had those rules, and there was deadlines set, and I think that if we all had a clear guideline, I think that would benefit the board, and it would benefit staff, so that they're not on a Monday night trying to get something on the agenda or trying to move something on the agenda more than it already has to be done, as we've seen this past week. Yeah, this week's been something. So those are kind of some of my ideas, and I'm open to anything else, but I really would like to see if we can all come to a consensus of what we'd like to see for our meetings. Mr. Golden.
Madam Chair, you had already indicated that you didn't have a preference as to the order in which we would move forward.
Absolutely not.
I do.
Okay.
I would like to have first a discussion, I guess it segues off of the public comment, and that is about public participation in our meeting. And so that's where I would like to start. And the point of departure for me is what the language of the Florida statutes say about public participation. And I don't want to abridged, abbreviated, or annotated. I want to know the exact language, because as you are aware, when we were at our school board association meeting last week, I kept hearing that the public's participation in our process is limited to the opportunity to be heard. And so I want someone to define whether hearing requires me to accept beyond public comment papers that are presented. And I want someone to share with me, how do we define being heard? And I thought the implication is that being heard relative to something on our agenda. We start every meeting saying, this is a business meeting. And so I'm not particularly really interested in trying to stretch the meeting so that we can accommodate every idea, every attitude, every new perspective that's not on the particular agenda. So I'd like to start there so we can flesh that out to our satisfaction, and even beginning with this first meeting that we're going to have in a little bit.
Well, since this is all lawyers,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Welcome to the law firm of Teitelbaum, Dye, Minor, and Golden. Yeah. And make no mistake about it, I am the junior partner in this outfit here. So.
I'll take a stab at this. And Mitch can clarify as well. The protocols that the school board are using are the ones that the Neola group have produced and the board has adopted. And so the board is, that's what the protocols that we're following. My understanding is that group, if somebody challenges the legality of your procedure, that group will actually cover your legal defense. So they're saying that the protocols and they're more than Florida. I think they're nationwide. So that's what we've got. And I don't know if that's been tested. So that has the requirement of signing up to speak in advance. The only exception to that is if an item gets changed by the board and something gets added at the last minute, you then need to allow people who haven't signed up to speak on something that was added at the last minute. So you also could, but we currently don't, you could require that people, and I'm not familiar with the sign-up sheet, but you could require that they show their address so that they identify that they are a resident of Manatee County. Because it's the school board of Manatee County, so.
and speaking of bylaws, we actually also have a bylaw. It's 0169.1. That is our bylaw specific to public participation at board meetings, and a lot of that for the public really reiterates what is spoken before a public comment section.
I agree. And the reason I brought this up, Madam Chair, is simply because in our bylaws and in the adopted frame of reference that we use, I see that the public may speak. That's A and B. It just seems to me, I've had an opportunity, this is not the first elected board I've sat on. I've sat on a board with the city council, and we were always available to meet with people who wanted to talk with us about individually, because we were covered by the Sunshine Law, who wanted to talk with us, who wanted to present things to us, who wanted to show things to us. And I'm concerned that we not continue in the vein of, well, not only can you speak, but you can bring your materials and present that when you have an opportunity to speak to any one of us and present material. I'm not in any way wanting to infringe upon anyone's right to spend their 3 minutes saying what they want to say about what's on the agenda. But I'm available, and I'm sure as we are all, to speak to anybody at any time and to hear what anybody else, and to receive. I can't imagine I would ever say, no, don't give me that. But I wanted to get that out of the way because we did spend a lot of time last year doing just that.
Dr. Hopes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree. As we learned in our annual ethics training from one of the attorneys at the conference, it struck a chord with me as well, because the statutes require the opportunity for the public to be heard on an issue that is about to be voted on by the board. And our meetings oftentimes have digressed because some board before us decided we would have an open public comment period for anybody to say anything, and according to the new vice chair, they could be critical of board member performance, they could be critical of staff, they could, they just needed to be,
You are next.
let's just say that we have heard that in the passed. And a board meeting is a meeting, this meeting is our meeting this evening is a meeting of the business of the board. We have items that we've publicly noticed, or we may have amended the agenda, and that's what we're here for. We're here to take up those agenda items. And I think this open comment period, if a particular board member wants to have a town hall and let constituents come up and say whatever they want to say, that's fine. But a business meeting of the board is just that. And the statutes are clear that the public must be provided an opportunity to speak on the issue that is about for action to be taken by the board. That's it. And I think that we will have a much more structured and effective meeting if we allow the public on each of those items that we're getting ready to vote on. Once that motion is passed and seconded, and then before discussion, you have public comment. That's the way the legislature works. That's the way other public body. You can't go up before the legislature and just talk about whatever you want to talk about. The chairman calls you up to speak on the issue that the public body is about to take action on. And that would be my position, and that was reiterated in our annual training. And I think that may be where Reverend Golden was going with this, is that the public should be commenting on the issues on our agenda before we take action on them. And I think we need to do away with general public comment, that anybody can come up here with whatever materials and talk for 3 minutes about whatever they want to talk about. That's not the business of the board. That's an open forum, that's a town hall, that's something else, but not the business meeting of the board. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Kennedy?
Chair.
Thank you. In 0169.1, the second line says, public comments related to education and the district are welcome and encouraged. So I would disagree with a couple of characterizations. Number one, I don't think we have a public comment problem, because normally the public comments that are made in the open public comment section are related to school district business. We don't have anybody up here free-forming talking about, the Buccaneers or anything like that. I can't think of an example of somebody coming up and talking about something that wasn't related to the district, number one. Number two, what I said last meeting was that if a speaker would like to be critical of the board members or the superintendent's job performance, that is fair game. And I didn't just make that up out of thin air. Legal said that first. And we don't have a public comment problem. I do have one suggestion I'd like to make for these bylaws, but let's not go overboard with imposing restrictions on public comment, especially in the environment I believe that we're coming out of. I would like us to see us be more welcoming and open to the public, not go further down the road of trying to silence people. The one change I would like to make, change the subject, is it's on page, sorry, I'm online, the online version. It's packet page 8. It's public 169.1, section B, and it addresses groups and factions addressing the board. I would suggest for the board that at a future meeting, we do a public notice to remove that entire section about groups and registering as a group, and just leave it as you can sign up to speak, whether it be online or in a public comment card, and you get 3 minutes. So we remove the group option, and then which would in turn remove the requirements of registering as a group and having a physical signature page and so forth. I think it would just make it a lot easier to say, if you come up, you have 3 minutes. That's it. Oh, and one more thing. Glenn, I want to just address your comment about opening the floor for public comment at any item. I disagree with you on that. I think it's not only legal, but I think it just makes for a more orderly meeting when people have to register in advance, even if it's when they get here at 5:45. And I know you were here back at the time, but if you remember, we've changed this bylaw from previously, because if you remember, the rule used to be as long as you get your comment card in before we got to the item on the agenda, that was fair game. And there were Linda Neely, God bless her and God rest her soul. If you remember, Linda would jump up before an item, go fill out a card, And Linda sometimes was up here for 10 different items. I admire her stamina at those meetings, but I don't think it made the meetings better. And I think it just opens us up for the potential for, if a group of people wanted to come in and slow this meeting down to a halt, they could, they could do it pretty effectively through public comment. So I just wanted, since you brought it up, I wanted to address it. And I'm supportive of us just removing, I think, like I said, I think public comment is fine. I would just like to see us remove this group option. Thank you.
I know that you're next online, but Mr. Minor hasn't spoken to this topic, so I wanted to give Mr. Minor an opportunity if he wanted to before we go back around.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hopes and the, spoke with respect to 0169.1, I believe that was what.
No, state statutes I was referring to.
Okay. Well, while you were speaking, I was looking at 0.169.1, which seemed to relate to your comments. Your comments distilled were that this board, this district, would benefit if we were to allow, public comment to any one or more specific propositions on the agenda. And that's B in 0.169.1. And you would support reforming, amending our policies that are on 3.1E to basically take out the first paragraph and have it start with the first sentence of the second paragraph of 0169.1. And also change have it go through the second have the rest of that paragraph, except for the last sentence.
Mr. Minor, I'm sorry, can you tell me exactly where you are in this policy? Can you read like the beginning sentence or?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, in policy 0169.1, public participation at board meetings. That's what I'm referring to.
Gotcha there.
And I was trying to express what I understood were Mr. Hopes' comments about reforming for the better our meetings. And I interpreted his comments to endorse amending 0169.1 to eliminate the first paragraph, except for the last sentence of the first paragraph, which says each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board. And then pick up with the second paragraph where it reads, the board recognizes the value of school governance through public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on school matters of community interest during the board meetings. And then we would skip down to the sentence that begins, for the purposes of public participation, there would be, and just pick up, a member of the public may speak on one or more specific propositions of the agenda. That is eliminating A and just have the language of B. And then pick up and leave it at that. Do I interpret your comments that way? Yeah, correctly? May I ask?
Yes, Mr. Ryan, I think you're close. With regards to the first paragraph, really, it's fine as long as it is rewritten so it says public. So I would have it read, public comments related to propositions on the agenda are welcomed and encouraged. And then go on, public comment is not, to discuss things unrelated to the district. It's not to criticize. Those things should be handled in writing to the board. I would remove section A because it's broad. In other words, I would do away with the general comment period, and I would, for the sake of the business of the board, which is what this meeting is, the meeting that I'm referring to is the business meeting of the board, and that we would limit public comment 3 minutes to the specific proposition that the board is considering taking action on. And someone could speak on every item on that agenda that we're getting ready to take action on. With regards to the public comment, I do believe that we should have a comment, request form that could be filled out in writing. And that can be done right before we come up to that agenda item, or when someone hears other public testimony and wants to speak on the item on the agenda that we are taking up, that they could fill out the form, they could hand it to the clerk could then get that message to the chair, and that person could speak on the item. And then we would have a record. That's how the legislature handles it in committee meetings. That's how other bodies handle it. So I think that, and so to what you stated, then those would be the amendments to this policy. I would like to see, for the sake of the business of the board, that we revise the policy so that we limit public comment to the items we're taking action on. If we want to have another meeting at another time to allow the general public to come and talk about anything they want to talk about the district, then we can have that. But that's not the business meeting of the board. The business meeting of the board, we lay out business that the superintendent needs us to address in order for her to operate the district.
Mr. Dye, I know
Thank
you had
you.
something you wanted to add. Thank you.
Yeah, just from a legal standpoint, I just wanted to make sure the board understood that from a legal standpoint, Dr. Hopes is correct. You do not have to provide a general public comment section on your agenda. You're only required to allow public comment on these propositions, things you're going to vote on. So that's been done traditionally, but it's not required, okay? And then as far as what Mr. Minor brought up, the allowing a group to speak for, someone representing a group to speak for 5 minutes, that's also not something that's legally required. And it's actually, at the School Board Attorneys Association, I asked a number of attorneys of the larger school districts about these items, and I didn't find any other district that has that 5-minute rule. That's an awful long time. It's also difficult to enforce who is a group. So there's no legal problems with both of those items if they were eliminated.
Mr. Golden.
Mr. Dye, with respect to these, what do you call them, Neola proposals, I heard you say at the beginning of the discussion that these are presented to us as, and I don't know, are they foundational, are they directional, are they required in terms of being able to be protected by our actions with respect to the board? In other words, we're talking about public participation at this board, and now the subject has come up about, well, let's take some of this stuff out and move some of this stuff around. And if we find out later that that shouldn't have been done at the risk of having a lawsuit, are we covered under the Neola package?
I think we would look into that when we went through the process. If the board decided to change any of these, we would contact that company who we're under contract with and make sure that they don't have a problem with that.
But as it stands right now, what is here, they've already not said that they have a problem with.
Correct.
Okay. So when we meet and something, and public comment related to education, and I'm piggybacking off of what Mr. Kennedy said, and the district are welcome and encouraged, to whom would the responsibility fall to say that is not related to education, nor that that is a district concern? Right there in that moment, is that the chair of the board, or would we have to get a legal opinion from you as to whether or not that's something that could permissibly be discussed?
Well, right now, with the open public comment, it's difficult to police that. If somebody's speaking on a particular action item, I believe it would be up to the chair if they felt they had gotten off topic and could correct the person and warn them that was not the matter they were speaking on.
And the reason I brought this up is because on page 2, section C,
Yep.
it talks about the vice chairman may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when it is beyond the allotted time, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Request an individual to leave, request the assistance of law enforcement officers in the removal of a disorderly person, call for recess or an adjournment. That's the
Yeah, and I misspoke. I should have said vice chair.
okay. But it does not limit, other than the vice chair being able to say this, that I'm going to terminate your statement. So it would appear that procedurally, this falls under the banner of what the vice chair would do in public comment.
Yes.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to make any changes except to either agree with the vice chair or disagree with the vice chair to terminate the right of someone to speak.
Correct. And even to the point of having law enforcement remove somebody from the hall.
Okay, and the reason I brought that up, Madam Chair, is because I'm not trying to have a chilling effect on anybody's right to speak. What I am trying to do is to make sure that we are all in agreement as to who determines when that right should be ended. And it says here in the rule that has already been adopted, has already been accepted, that the vice chair has that discretion. And so I would not be in favor of eliminating any provision of that which has already been accepted and adopted. What I would hope is that the leadership that we have of the board now will be astute enough, and we've just spent 2 days going through training and trying to understand that we would then defer to the vice chair as to whether or not whatever public comment is coming forth is violative of our policy. That's where I am. I don't want to get into let's take this out and let's parse this, and because what will happen is that's an invitation to a lawsuit. And I don't mind being sued. I just don't like to lose.
All right, and next is Mr. Kennedy, I have Vice Chair Kennedy.
Charlie is
As
fine.
we've been talking about the vice chair position.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I just want to circle back to Dr. Hopes' idea about that the only comment that can be made is about an agenda item, which I think, again, is we're kind of closing the options for what the public can come and address us about, I think is a really bad signal to send to the public. And I'll just use two examples sitting in the room. Mr. Nelson comes up all the time to talk about the budget. Are we going to shut him down and say, sorry, Norm, this isn't on the agenda tonight, so you have to, we're not even willing to listen to you for 3 minutes? Or if a citizen like Glenn has an idea about, hey, district, you could do things better if you were to institute some solar into your construction program. Sorry, Glenn, there's no solar items on the agenda. You can't speak about that. Go sit down. Like, that's moving in the opposite direction, I believe, of where we want to go. So I'll say it again, like, we've spent a while on this now. And it just feels like we have solutions in search of a problem. And I just don't feel like public comment is, and we've had some issues lately, and we've had criticisms of staff try to be made. I think we've done a good job of shutting those down. But I'll be honest, I've heard more criticisms of staff from this dais than I have heard from that podium in the past couple of months. So I think instead of checking the public, we need to check ourselves. So thank you.
Dr. Hopes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to make sure we're differentiating. Now, my understanding of a business meeting of the board is to conduct the business of the board. And what I am proposing is that for the business meeting of the board, we focus on the business that we have laid out in accordance with the needs of the superintendent and requests of board members. And that being said, one of the other changes I would make if we move forward, and I hope we do, during the business meeting of the board, limit public testimony to the agenda item we are about to take action on and debate. And therefore, I think it should be the chair that handles or governs the public speaking on the agenda item, because the chair is the one that's focused on ensuring that we all are focused on the agenda item that we are proposing to take action on. And the chair is in the best position to determine when a public speaker is deviating away from the issue that we are about to debate following the public comment. I think these are minor changes, and I'm only speaking about the business meeting of the board. We have workshops, we can decide to how handle workshops differently. We can have board meetings where we do allow the public to come up and speak about whatever they want to speak about with regards to education. But in all fairness, I mean, how many meetings did we hear, 3 minutes of public comment about iReady, and we're not even discussing iReady? How many board meetings do we have to sit and listen to people saying we need to remove the superintendent when we're not talking about the superintendent's contract? This is a business meeting of the board. We should be here with our focus on the agenda and the items that need to be to take business, on. And it's not, I don't see this as inhibiting the public's right to speak before us on issues that we're going to take action on. That's why the law is there. This, I have to tell you, is one of the few public bodies where I have seen that we can go on and on with public comment for sometimes over an hour on items that we're not really going to take action on. And that does not provide for an effective, efficient meeting. It's not fair to our staff. It's not fair to our employees. It's not fair to the superintendent. And quite frankly, I don't think it's fair to either one of us. And if any one of us wants to have an open forum where public and constituents can come and talk about anything they want to talk about at the district, fine. Schedule that meeting. Commissioner Servia and I had a meeting down in District 4 where people came and they talked about whatever they want to talk about. Then you could bring it back to the board, but not the business meeting of the board where we have a start time, we have an agenda, and we are here to conduct the business of the board. And that's what I'm referring to narrow it to the issues that we're going to take action on. That's not to eliminate other opportunities for the public to inform us in a public forum. They can put it on social media. They can say we would like to have a town hall at Samoset Elementary. But I'm talking about the business meeting of the board and getting down to the business of the board. Thank you, Madam Chair. So
Mr.
I would
Minor.
scratch through vice chair on section C, so that's the chairman, the chair, we need to get rid of man, because that's kind of sexist.
Mr. Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple comments. Florida statutes are pretty clear that whatever we put into, these policies, that the chair is the ultimate authority with respect to what goes on at a school board meeting. And so there is authority, a duty, for, the chair to make sure that the meeting is conducted in accordance with law and in an orderly manner with protocols of proper conduct. The idea of, restricting public comment to comment from the audience about matters that are on the agenda, which is the gist, I think, of Mr. Hope's proposal, certainly would not exclude anything I've ever heard, from Mr. Gibolina or Mr. Johnson. And I think that there's not any business meeting that occurs that we don't talk about finance or have some kind of financial report. And that's what I hear from these, one of these distinguished people. Or any meeting where we're not talking about, in some extent, the construction, which I think is Mr. Gibolina's high point that he has shared his wisdom with, during meetings. It certainly, his comments would not be in any way, limited by, as I understand, Mr. Hope's suggested reform of our duties here. As my comments suggest, I think that the reform is overdue. As far as the specific wording on it, I think that needs to be hashed out to reflect that intent. But I think that it would be proper. I can't imagine Neola not approving it. Neola wants our business. What we have right now has a lot of differences from other districts who also are using Neola. They allow for flexibility as long as it doesn't conflict with the statutes. It's in their interest, it's in our interest. I don't think that, but I think it is wise to have whatever suggested changes reviewed by Neola ahead of time so we don't run into that problem. But I don't see that as what has been suggested earlier today as being any way of jeopardizing our relationship with Neola or their incentive, for doing business, that they would back us up in a court of law. So, thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my comments.
Okay, so to recap, it seems like we're pretty split on this one, and which always makes it way more fun for us. It sounds like some would like to remove the public comment section and have either public comment run by the chair or the vice chair, and some would like it to remain the same. I'm not really sure if there's a really good pathway forward.
Ma'am, please don't interpret my comments to saying that public comment shouldn't be run by the vice chair. I'm just saying that ultimately, yeah, okay, the chair has authority.
I heard ya.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. I said or, chair or vice chair.
Okay.
I don't know if I see a really strong pathway forward, because I don't know if somebody were to bring forward the alterations, it certainly could make it onto the agenda. We could discuss it, or we can bring it back later if we want to further discuss this. To me, changing public comment requires a lot of conversation, and we've already had a lot of conversation on it, no doubt. So if somebody wants to bring forward some proposed changes, I mean, we can add it to the agenda and we can discuss it and vote it up or down. I don't know if I see another pathway forward with that. I agree that if we want to do that, then we do need to submit it to Neola to get their approval beforehand. Mr. Golden?
And Madam Chair, you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm suggesting not only for this one for public participation, that the others that we have set forward to be discussed tonight,
Yeah.
that whatever proposed changes first be vetted through legal, through Neola,
Sure.
and subject to them being accepted. Otherwise, the written word remains the same because we know we're protected under what we have. The question is whether we would be protected by what we're proposing. And so I'm suggesting that before we bring this out, that any proposals be submitted to legal and that they submit them to Neola. And that way, when we do come, we will not be just talking about what we think, what we believe,
Sure.
what we feel, but we will have solid legal grounds so that at least we're protecting the taxpayers' dollars.
So I would suggest that if there is a board member that feels strongly that some of this should be altered, that they get it to Mrs. Arajo, so that she can submit it to Neola, have it looked over by our attorneys, and then it can come before the board for a vote.
Yeah, up or down.
To move forward about looking at some of these other bylaws, I just want to point out a couple things that we should be aware of, that we probably don't need to change, obviously, at the moment, but board may need to change it in the next coming years, because in two places in our bylaws, it says that this election is countywide. It's in bylaw 0143 and bylaw 0141. As I said, at this point, that seems to be accurate, but not knowing who will be here in the coming years, I just want to point out that that is there. And then the only other thing that I felt was important to point out was policy 0171. And that was just review of policy. And it does say in here that there should be a comprehensive review of all of our policies every 2 years. And that is something that I think we should continue to focus on. I think we had that with Mr. Kennedy when you were chair. We, went through all of those policies. It was so much fun. But we need to continue to do that because that is really what our work is. We are a governing body. We need to take the time to really look at those policies and review them and make sure that they still are relevant to the business of the school district. And so I know that's a big undertaking for us, but I guess I would anticipate at some point in this coming year, we need to do that. Because if we're doing this every 2 years and it was under Mr. Kennedy, then I think we're coming up to those 2 years pretty soon. Yeah, don't say that. So those are really my notes on the bylaws specifically. Is there any other notes on the bylaws before we move forward with our way of work and safety as we are rounding out our first hour? Mr. Titlebaum.
Just for clarification, should this board bring it back, we'd be requesting an approval to advertise. If the board says, hey, we'd like to discuss it, we'd like to say yes, vote it up or down, then ultimately it goes out for 30 days.
Right.
Statutory requirement. Now, if Neola doesn't agree with what we put in our policy, Neola doesn't sanction it, it actually becomes a Manatee policy. That means, as it was stated correctly, we don't have the legal guarantee of it. But ultimately, if it does come back, it'll be notice of approval to advertise and amend policy XYZ, board public comment, etc.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Vice Chair Kennedy.
Thank you. Charlie is fine.
I can't do that.
That's okay. You brought up at the beginning, you had a comment about getting agenda items in or making requests for pull.
Yeah, that was my
Were
other
you gonna,
item. If we're done with the policy part, then it's to move on to like our way of work, our
oh,
operations.
so you were gonna get there, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it back and I'll let you.
No, if you want to move on to that, let's move on to that.
Oh, okay, yeah, so my suggestion was that, each chair works differently, and I would, and I appreciate you asking the other four of us for input. But, I would also say, you are the chair and you run the meetings. That to me extends to your rules for us in the week leading up to the meeting. So if you want to have that Friday deadline or you don't, I personally, my preference would be to leave it up to you, because you're the showrunner here.
All right, and that's perfectly fine, except for I've sat through now 3 chairs, and each chair that I've sat through, as I've enjoyed all of you, but each one does change the rules, and we never actually have this conversation. So if nothing else, I just want us all to be on the same page about what the rules are.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because it seems as if when that happens, then I like to have things pretty clear. Whatever the rule is, I just want it to be followed with consistency. So if we're going to have the Bob Gauze rule, or we're going to have whatever rule, I want everyone to be on the same page and said, so that, because we can't talk about it any other time. So then all of a sudden, you're here, oh, well, so-and-so wants it this way. Well, there's no other way to know unless we talk about it. And maybe that's the girl in me that wants to do that, but I'm not asking everyone to talk about their feelings. I'm just asking about talk about the procedures. Bob Gauze wanted it. I know. See, I didn't serve with him, but I know he had his rules. And it was the Friday before a meeting, or a Friday before the agenda was published.
I think it was Friday at noon, wasn't it?
Friday at noon before the meeting, you had to request to have something pulled from the agenda, like from consent,
Or if you wanted to add something.
or if you wanted to add something. So up until Friday at noon, you can contact the superintendent, contact Ms. Arojo, and request something to be changed on the agenda. And after that time period, I think we could all agree that it's truly not fair to staff or the board to do it after that. Or the public. Is everyone okay with that rule? Is everyone comfortable with that?
So what I was going to suggest is for our regularly scheduled or notice meetings, which are on a Tuesday, that with the exception of some extenuating circumstance, because I think we normally publish the agenda like the Friday before,
Tuesday.
the Tuesday before, so that allows three days, and so I think noon would be reasonable, for our scheduled meetings, and then we could come up with something if it's an irregular meeting, that it's a certain number of hours prior to it. And other than that, if you have a change, then you have to bring it to a motion when we're adopting the agenda during the meeting.
Speaking
I'm
of that,
comfortable with that.
speaking of that, if you don't mind, when I went to FSBA and went to the Chairmanship Academy, one of the things that they discussed, which is I think different than how we do it here, but they said was the proper posture to do it, is when we are in a board meeting and we are adopting the agenda, that a board member can move an item from consent while we're adopting the agenda without a motion. That they said that you could pick number 3 on the consent agenda and say, I would like to have that moved, and that is not even a voted on item. And that was one of the things that they discussed. That's once again, I think, a way of work if we want to do it that way. It's just a courtesy. We all respect each other's time. We all respect each other in general. And if somebody says, man, I really want to talk about number 17 and it's on the consent agenda, when we are approving the agenda, if somebody would like to do that, I think it's as a courtesy. If somebody would like to talk about it more, I think that's a reasonable ask. Mr. Minor.
I think that's been the practice of this board before I was chair and while I was chair. If somebody, some board member wants to have something pulled, from consent into, the regular agenda at hand, I don't think it's set forth in our bylaws. I don't think it's something in Robert's Rules of Order, but it has been the common practice, I think, since, I've been on the board, but then my memory isn't all that great going back a few years, but, yeah, I guess Mr. Kennedy has that too. It's more than a courtesy, it just makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Golden?
Would it be helpful, because we all have board briefings with the superintendent, would it be helpful at our board briefings, where we first view the agenda as it is printed, to raise those issues with the superintendent? And is it logistically feasible that the chair would be the last person to have a board briefing? So the chair would then have the benefit not only of the agenda, but the chair would also have the benefit of all of the input from all of the other board
Sunshine
members.
violation.
I don't think we can do that.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna ask one.
Good thinking, but.
I'm gonna ask one of my law partners, because.
Yeah, it's
what-
sunshine. She can't say what,
Others
that dummy minor wants
See,
to have.
that's why you ought to let people finish.
Yeah.
Because what I'm concerned with is simply that we want the agenda modified, which
No,
we've already
not-
said.
Not discussion of it, but
Yeah.
I want it on new business versus.
That's right. And I know we've already heard from both the lawyer and the non-lawyer that we can do that without a motion. And all I'm asking is that it gives the chair the benefit of knowing what has already been suggested to be moved. And it's just, but I know it can't, I know it's not a violation of sunshine to do that, but
Because you're not discussing a voting issue or details, but whether you want it pulled off a consent into new, or if you want to add a new topic somewhere on the agenda for a vote. Is that what you're
we've already
requesting?
decided that we all are going to be able to do up until Friday at noon.
Okay, I'm gonna look at my computer, and it looks like Mr. Kennedy, Vice Chair Kennedy, you were next.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. Gene, are you suggesting that, was this kind of framed as it's within Robert's Rules of Order, that one member can make that pull from consent request at the opening of the meeting?
Yes,
And that's your suggestion that we'd be able to do that?
yes.
Okay, I have a problem with that, only in that, not that one member is doing it, but just in preparation, like, so if Mr. Minor walks in and says, I want number 7 pulled, and the superintendent may not have staff here whose that item belongs to, and so the staff is one concern, and then also for, maybe for board preparation too, I would suggest that would have to go in before Friday at noon too, because that gives, when the agenda is amended on Friday afternoon and then republished, that gives a heads up to the other board members, hey, somebody, we won't know who it is, but somebody wants that pulled, so board member, you might want to go back and take a look at that and follow up with the superintendent to get more information.
That would certainly be the preference. I'm just saying that that is permitted. Like I said, I believe we should respect each other's time.
Gotcha, okay, so we're on the same page.
Yes, I believe Mr. Dye wanted to speak.
Yep, appears we have a bylaw on this. 165.3, and it states, excuse me, the agenda as presented shall be followed unless altered by the presiding officer or a majority of those present and voting. So it appears one person cannot pull,
So even if it's allowed by Robert's rules, you're saying that it would not be allowed by our bylaws?
yes.
Okay.
Unless we change the bylaws.
However, when we're having a conversation with our briefings, it's not been posted to the public yet. So we're setting the agenda. Are we allowed to set the agenda then that way? That's just like a board member saying, I want this on the board, or instead of it presented consent, it's not been formally posted.
Yeah, I don't think the fact that it's public is a relevant item,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm just talking about all of us being on the same page, and I think what I'm hearing is, it's better to do it before the agenda is published, it's better to do it before Friday at noon. We don't really want to blindside anybody, and that's our goal, we don't want to waste anybody's time. Am I hearing that?
I think the chair summed it up real well. I think that Board Member Kennedy, said well kind of what we ought to be, sensitive to in terms of staff preparation, public being notified. ultimately, the chair has authority with respect to that agenda. But the chairs, while I've been on it, if anybody says, hey, there's this thing on consent that I think ought to be moved to, new business, that ought to, I think that, having that done, telling the superintendent I want to have that done, I think that as it's being put together, I think the superintendent would get together with, the staff assistant, for doing that, and the chairs. The chair ultimately has to approve it, but I don't think a chair is going to say, no, that's not a good idea. And then otherwise, at a meeting, if somebody wants to change it, then they have to have a vote, a majority approve, taking it off. And,
Except for the chair. The chair has like a superpower.
I'm not sure, after it's published, and it's there, and you show up and it's on the, consent agenda, I'm not sure that the authority, the chair has authority then to say, well, let's take it off. I could be wrong, but.
I'll read it again. It says the agenda as presented shall be followed unless altered by the presiding officer or a majority of those present and voting.
Well, maybe you got a point. That's not been the protocols that I followed, but.
Dr. Hopes?
Thank you. Yeah, actually, it's either in the bylaws or the operating procedures that the chair can amend the agenda at any time.
Okay. So I stand
But I think for Reverend Golden, it has been the practice of the board that whenever we would raise an issue with a superintendent of something coming off the consent agenda, it's usually taken off. If it's before published, it comes off. As a courtesy, I think all of us as chairs have honored that request. If a member wants to pull it off, it's amended. I think it's reasonable to have a time frame there. And I think really, at least for the past 3 years, when a board member has wanted to amend the agenda to remove something off of the consent, as a courtesy to each other, we've usually agreed to it, even if it's at the beginning of the meeting. I believe our bylaws also provide for the board can amend the agenda at any time during the meeting as well, which is not always the case in Robert's Rules of Order. Some you have to amend the agenda at the beginning, and then you're out of luck if you want to change the agenda after you've adopted the agenda. But our operating procedures and rules and bylaws allow for the agenda to be amended at any time during the meeting. But I think that in practice, it's just as you have mentioned, that when we bring it up in a briefing, because usually the briefing's at least a week before the agenda gets published, which allows for enough time. There are extenuating circumstances, and we had those where something came up and one of us may have had a conversation with a constituent and we've requested it, but I really don't personally recall a time when a request to remove something off consent was never really honored. So I think we've been practicing that in a cordial and a respectful way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Kennedy?
I think Brett was waiting, but he just didn't hit a speed button up top there.
I'm trying to be fair. Some people are using the button and some people aren't. See, this is what I'm talking about, guys. We've got to all
I
be
like the button.
consistent. I like the button too, because I can see it here. I can
And
see
you
it
see it up there. Yeah.
I like that, but I know not everybody's there, so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about.
Y'all got buttons?
There's a button on your computer. It says speaker, and when you push it, I can see it so that I can be fair about this.
It's all right.
And I've been trying to be fair
graphic
between the
interface.
two people that are actually using the button and the two people that are not. But I think we need to be consistent so that I can be fair about it. I would much prefer to be fair.
That's the 50% of the law firm down there.
I mean, we just need some consistency, guys. That's all
They're
I'm
waiting
saying.
for us to make it a policy before they follow.
Well, I might just do that.
Oh, God.
I'll bring that forward.
Help us, Lord Jesus, help us. But now I've forgotten what I wanted to say. No, I think there's a big difference between removing items from the consent agenda and any one of us wanting to put something new onto the agenda. And we've whipped this consent agenda thing to death, but I'd really like to spend some time talking about whether or not after the agenda, if that 12 noon Friday deadline also applies to adding things to the agenda, and to say, I'm not so sure that that's a good idea, because then you got to deal with getting public comment or somebody that has something to say about what you want to put on the agenda as a new item, a new piece of business. That, I think, is a bigger problem, and last year proved to be a specific problem with one of the most significant things that we dealt with. How are we going to deal with adding to the agenda after it has been published? I don't have any problem taking something from one category on the agenda and putting it in another category, from consent to what have you. But when we bring up something new, and particularly something that may not have even been workshopped, how do we do that in such a way that it is helpful and not we just stew around for a long time?
So to understand what you're saying, your comment is more about when somebody comes to a meeting and adds something to the agenda and it may not have been workshopped and it gets added that day.
That's correct. That's where I'm at.
Wouldn't it be more preferential then to, even if it were on a Friday at noon, wouldn't that be more preferential to everybody?
No, I don't. I'm just saying, is that the deadline not only for taking things off of consent, but would that also be the deadline for putting new business on?
I think that's my understanding of how it has always worked, or when the Bob Goss rule, I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep calling it that too. His name's gonna be in the newspapers and everything. But, that was always my understanding of his rule, because once again, it's more respectful of everybody's time up here. It's more respectful of all the staff if it's on the agenda and we have time to review it.
The only reason I mention it is because there's going to be someone that comes to that stand that Tuesday night and say, you put this on Friday, as opposed to an agenda that has been prepared since the previous Tuesday. And how do we address that concern? How do you, or do we even want to? This goes back to this public participation part. It's always before me. How do we maximize participation of the public? And if we're saying, in Manatee County, we are going to make our agenda firm as of 12 noon on Friday, and that's as it relates not only to changing categories, but also even allowing board members to add new matters to the agenda.
Well, I don't think you can stop any board member from adding to the agenda
No, I'm
the
talking
day
about-
of,
but-
when we're at our meeting. I don't think you
Oh,
could,
okay.
I don't think
I
you could
see.
stop that anyways. I mean, anyone is allowed to do that, and you can't stop that. I don't think you'd necessarily want to stop that. I'm just saying, I don't think that this would prohibit that at all. I just think, out of respect for everybody, it should be done by Friday at noon, at least. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so we've got a rule for the board, and then we've got a rule for the public. Because what I hear you say is that I can come to this board meeting and move to put an item on the agenda that has not been published, the public hasn't had an opportunity to sign up to speak to address. So that's accorded to me. But to the rest of the world, only what's there by noon Friday will they be able to address from the
No, if somebody brings something that day, we must allow them to speak on it publicly. Even if they didn't get to sign up on it, that has always been opened up to public comment if it was added to the agenda that day during our board meeting. It has always been open to public comment.
Okay. And that, attorney, is the reason I asked that.
You guys are the law firm down there.
Yeah, I know. The reason I asked that is because I heard that you said that after a certain point in time, only the chair and by a majority vote of the board. And that's what I thought the due process would involve. That, yes, I could come here on the night of the meeting and says, I want to add this to the agenda because it's so important. I mean, it's the most important thing we've had since sliced bread. But I couldn't get it on the agenda until I got 2 other board members to agree with me. Is that?
Mr. Dye.
Let me restate it again. An individual board member may only add something to the already published agenda by getting it approved by the chairperson or a majority of the members.
Okay.
Agree
So
with
you don't just automatically have the right to add something at the last minute.
Okay. So, okay. I think that's fair enough, because then if I can't get the chair to agree that it is the most
Right.
important thing since sliced bread, I have to come and get, so there are 2 checks. And the reason I'm saying this is because I know it's gonna come up. We're gonna be asked, how did you bring this up? And we don't know anything about it, and we don't get a chance to say anything about it. And so we need to be able to say, well, yes, I brought it up, but the chair agreed with it. That's 1 vote.
So you're just gonna throw the chair right under the bus?
Yeah, well, or the chair did not agree with it, and then and so I need only 1 other vote, or 2 votes. That's the only point that I'm trying to make. We are making these as we go along, and we need to explain it so that the people will not come here and accuse us of being.
I'm not making anything. I was
No.
just trying to reinstitute a rule that was in
Yeah.
effect before I was even here.
Okay.
Mr. Kennedy, Vice Chair Kennedy.
All right, 2 things real quick. To Reverend Golden's point, in our public participation bylaw 169.1, under subsection A, number 2, it does say if a proposition is added to the agenda after the start of the meeting, or I would say at the beginning of the meeting, an opportunity will be granted for the public to exercise their right to participate. So that is there. That protection for the public is there. I just want to speak for myself one final time about the Friday at noon rule being, unless it is in very extenuating circumstances like AFSCME is voting, and so if the vote is positive, then we're going to add that to the agenda tonight. But items that are coming from us as board members, because just look at the agenda for this evening's meeting. It was posted Tuesday. There was 6 or 7 items pulled from consent. So when I got that email, when I got that notification, I went back and took a look at them. I was like, okay, we're going to be going deeper into these, I guess. Let me brush up a little bit. And then today, and I don't know when the emails was sent, but I saw it around lunchtime, and now all of that has been removed. That was multiple construction projects, which I would imagine. Well, I don't want to editorialize, but that was a pretty significant pack of items to remove from the agenda. And I haven't had a chance to talk to the superintendent yet, so I still am coming into this meeting tonight not understanding what's going on around me, which is fine because we're not acting on it tonight. But,
When we approve the agenda, we'll discuss it.
okay, great. So then I will know. Thank you, Madam
Yeah,
Chair.
I don't like to leave anybody in the dark, but
Okay.
sunshine makes it very difficult. Dr. Hopes.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, not to belabor this, but the opportunity for a member to add an item onto the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, that's in Robert's rules, and that's what bodies do. The only area where we deviate from that is our own rules that we adopted, or those before us adopted, provides for a member to amend the agenda anytime during the meeting with a majority vote of the board. And that's the only area where we deviate from it. The other comment I would like to make, and hopefully so we focus on it, is while it's great to have that opportunity to inform the public in advance of all the items that we're going to take up, we're really, this is the board. We have a statutory obligation to make many decisions in order for the superintendent to run this organization. And there are times when we need to add items because it's the business of the board to do that, or the superintendent has a need. And I'm hoping that we can move beyond this. We can't conduct the business of the board because we haven't given the public 72 hours notice to come. If someone's interested in what we do here, they can come to the meeting, and then whatever comes up, they have a right by law to speak. But I'm hoping that we don't try to make this so rigid that we lose sight of the fact we are here to conduct and govern the business of the district. And I understand at times there are issues that come up, and that's why there's a provision in Robert's rules to add an agenda item. But at no time should I don't believe we should feel so compelled to not conduct the business of the board because we want to allow 72 hours or 2 weekend days plus a half of a Friday for the public to prepare to address whatever we have going on. So keep in mind, sometimes we have to tune out the chatter because we're responsible for governing and setting policies over a nearly $1 billion a year organization. So I just too often I get the sense that we're hesitant because we think everything we do, has to have a certain period of notice to the public, and it's not. There are things that come up where we have to take action, and that's why we're here, to ensure that the business of the board and the district educates over 50,000 children a day, regardless of whether we gave the public adequate notice that we're adding a widget onto the agenda at the beginning of the agenda. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else on this topic? Mr. Minor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with what Mr. Hopes just spoke about.
That's one attorney.
Yeah. And one thing.
Got to put up with this
not-
all year.
not-
Two attorneys.
the public, the board members, all of the board members might not be happy about that, but that's the way it is. And there's value, there's wisdom, there's reasons, for that, and not everybody is always happy about that. And I remember an instance where I wasn't happy about it, and I was a 1 on a 4-to-1 vote, 2 or 3 times when we were saying goodbye to Dr. Green. And it was kind of, I guess, a recognition that I was right about something. And so, because I was right about some things, that some emergency action was taken, by the board and 4-to-1, and quite legally. But I said, the public ought to know about it. Well, so what? Not so what, but this is more important. And it was perfectly legal and proper. And I think everything, worked out well. I did my best to what I thought was best. And, the board, other board members did what they felt, and it worked out real well. And that brought about the birth of Mrs. Saunders being our superintendent. So there are good results that come from this. So, and it wasn't on hiring her, but because this was approval of Dr. Green, to go to Duval County. That this kind of last minute.
I just realized it was Reverend Golden that wanted to create the law firm. I'm the only one that's not sitting over there.
Yeah. Anyway.
It was really his request, yeah.
Okay. But I'm just affirming what
I can see the picture.
Mr. Hope said about the procedure. Sometimes you don't like it, but then you're on the short end of the stick, but that's the way it is. And even though at the moment it may say, oh, geez, that's not right, it is right. And you can have good results even if you lose on it 4-to-1. And this is an instance where that occurred.
The managing partner of the law firm wants to speak.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I saw that, but he didn't push his button, so, just saying.
I don't even know where the button is. I'm telling you, which one of these
I
things?
think somebody
okay?
has to get a lesson before the meeting today.
It says speak, but you can't see part of the K and half of the S.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Oh, look at you, there you are.
Yeah, did I
All
do
right.
it?
You did it.
Nice
Reverend
picture.
Golden.
I'm so proud of me. I hope my grandchildren are watching.
They did good.
Look at that.
You did good. What would you like to say?
Yeah, the only reason I'm really concerned about the issue of the time is that there are, in our own bylaws, student progression plan approval, where there's a limit, that there's a minimum amount of time that we do allow. So I'm just kind of not wanting us to be accused of something that we may not be aware of in our bylaws that requires us, particularly the advertising that we have to do. That's the only thing. I'm just kind of reluctant to engage in off-the-cuff policy making without the opportunity that's guaranteed for everybody to be heard, not just us, but the public.
I don't think I'm suggesting anything other than what we've already been doing,
Okay, that's fine.
other than to be respectful of staff's time. When some staff member has to call me Saturday morning at 9 o'clock because things have to be changed, that's not fair to that person on a Saturday morning that they're having to do that.
To do that, I agree.
That, I'm just asking for people to be respectful of other people's time. That's all I'm asking for.
But Madam Chair, I'm for the rest of the year, as long as we're alive, I'm just going to move that we save a lot of time and a lot of energy and go around and include my two colleagues down here and just let them speak, get it out the way, and that's going to die for the lack of a second, isn't it?
Well, that actually goes back to something else that was implemented in the past, and I just wanted, it hasn't been followed with fidelity, and that's okay. But at one point, we had all agreed, and I was not there because I was at an ultrasound appointment, and you weren't there because you weren't here yet.
But I
So
was not at an ultrasound appointment.
You were
Let's
not.
get that clear.
that's good to know.
Okay.
But the other three members were there, and it was agreed upon at that time that everybody would get 5 minutes. The person that made the motion would start, which I think is also in Robert's rules. And then it would just go in order. Everyone would get 5 minutes, and then the chair speaks last, and then it would do around a second time, the chair speaking last, and then there'd be a vote. And what I want to know is that something everyone would like to adhere to or not? I could, if we don't want the 5 minutes, but we want to go in a certain order, that's fine. Everybody hits their speaker button. I will follow whatever's on the speaker button if everybody can find that speaker button. Or not. But, to me, it would be most beneficial, everybody use their speaker button. We start with the person that made the motion. We go in a fair way, make sure everybody has one round. Somebody can't keep hitting that speaker button like Dr. Hopes. And
Oh, now we know.
and we be fair about it. That's just my suggestion. And Dr. Hopes, you're all up.
I would like to see us reinstitute what we had developed in our board training, and that would be, as you stated, follow the order. The maker of the motion would have 5 minutes in discussion. This is after the public
Sure.
makes their comments, and then in accordance with those that show up on the ranking, speak up to 5 minutes, and then the next person, and then we go around. I think that ended up being an orderly process. So I would concur, or I would ask that my fellow members support that procedure.
Is everyone fine with that? That whoever makes the motion will speak for 5 minutes. Like I said, I think that is Robert's rules. And then everyone else, hopefully will be able to find their speaker button, and we will just go in order of who has used their speaker button and go around.
And actually, the maker of the motion is given the opportunity to close on their motion before
Right.
the vote is taken.
That's fine with me. Is that okay with everyone else? Do we have an agreement? I don't have an agreement, I think, from everyone. But that was agreed upon when you were there, Mr. Minor. From my understanding. Like I said, I wasn't there. I was getting an ultrasound.
I don't remember that being in the minutes. So.
I'm just trying to achieve a way of work.
I think
Is
you're
that
doing a
an-
great job.
Is that an okay way of work for you?
I think it's better with the chair, recognizing people in order when they figure out how to use the buttons or otherwise
Right.
raise their hand.
Okay, now that's enough of that. I'm tired of y'all talking about me not being able to use my button. I'm gonna do the best I can.
I haven't used my button.
He hasn't touched it
She's
once.
talking about you too.
Yes, she's talking about-
Oh,
He hasn't touched it once.
I should have kept quiet, no matter what. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Ryder. I apologize.
Okay, well, I gave you my response. I'm not.
So you'd be fine with everyone going in the order, finding their speaker button and using it?
Where are your hands? I don't think we have to regiment it. I think you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
But do you agree to 5 minutes? I feel like whatever you have to say, you can get done in 5 minutes.
I think that often what should be said, could be said, needs to be said, can be done in much less than 5 minutes.
Agreed.
And to say, well, you get 5 minutes here, and let's say that somebody speaks for 30 seconds, I think it's a great idea because it is going to bring happiness to the world. Thank you, and that's why I move in favor of it. Okay? Now, someone says, yeah, I think that's great. Does that mean they're reserving 4.5 minutes or something? Or somebody gets in and says, well, I want to take for 5 minutes and tell you why it's bad for the world. And I just, so I don't find when looked at closely that it works out to the benefit of everybody. So that's just my,
To do a time frame, you mean?
yeah, kind of that time frame. I think we don't want to, it's up for the chair to kind of determine that it's fairly, the opportunity to speak to an issue is fairly passed around. And I think you're doing a great job, with that. And artificial constraints on and encouragement of the presenting wisdom, I don't think it's a good idea. So thank you.
I can understand that.
Yes.
Reverend Golden.
Madam Chair, I fully support the time limitation, and I agree even with the 5 minutes. The only thing I wish you would consider is the rotation in which you would call after the maker of the motion. One time going clockwise, the next time going counterclockwise, which really makes it an equal opportunity moment for each of us. Because if Dr. Hopes makes a motion and mine and myself, and then he makes another motion, so it's always going to go in that way. Which I don't have a problem with him making the motions. It's just that if it goes that way with the first motion, it ought to come this way, the second motion. That's all.
I interpreted that as you don't want to find the speaker button.
Madam Chair, I was going to say the same thing. It would be really easiest on the chair and everybody involved if we all just use our speaker button.
Yeah.
I agree with
It's
that.
it's one click. It's not hard to do.
And I will follow it with fidelity with the motion maker going first.
It's all the speaker button says is I want to speak.
Yes,
then
and then it shows
queues you
up
up.
on my computer.
Then you have a
so
never mind button if you want to clear it. It's
Yeah,
over
if
on
you
the
want to clear it
right-hand
off, and
side.
I will do my very best to follow that.
So hit your speaker button and then look for the never mind button on the right. No, go ahead. We won't.
No, I'm fine with it.
Says they speak.
It's over on the right-hand side. Never mind.
You're next in line to speak.
And then in the yellow bar all the way to the right, there you go. You got it.
Never mind. Okay.
I've heard some people in favor of the 5-minute rule,
Hey, look, Mr. Minor's up there.
I think we're all.
except for
Okay.
This is your speaker button.
Okay.
You're next in line to speak, your name's
and
on
we will
the
do that.
screen.
This is so embarrassing. I'm sitting there.
Hey, come on, man.
This is
Nobody's
embarrassing.
watching us anyways.
Mr. Kennedy, did you see your speaker button?
Yeah, talk to him anyway.
Did it move?
Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Then the only other thing that I thought that we should discuss is some of the safety, and we had kind of talked some of it in the executive session, but there were certain pieces that we kind of felt like were more, I think, as Mr. Kennedy had said, public-facing items like sitting or standing, those type of things that I don't know if we really were able to fully discuss that. So I'm looking for any other feedback we have on that, or if everybody's ready to move on.
Oh. Click, click. Okay, all right.
Mr. Kennedy,
You're fourth in line.
I don't have anything to say. That's unfair. That's really unfair.
Mr. Minor beat you.
it's not a race.
So I'm the last one, right?
Okay, let's move on. Mr. Kennedy, come on.
All right, I'll try to be quick. We did talk about this in closed session, so I'll just kind of just put some ideas out there and then everybody can shoot them down or support them, whichever. I think that obviously the security issue is important, but personally I feel like we have taken it a little bit far. And so my suggestion would be, I'm fine with security out front, whether it be wanding or a metal detector, because it seems like that makes some sense. But my concern is that when you come up to the board meeting, there's multiple guardians out front, and then when you come into the board meeting room, there's 2 or 3 police officers in here, there's police officers in the hallway. I know that's got to be somewhat expensive for the district. And so I would like to see us, it's really the heavy police presence that, that I would like to see us address. Because when the public enters, it just feels like we are in this heightened security state, which I don't think is welcoming to the public. Now, granted, it's 2019 and we live in the world we do, so we have to have some, I think, security presence at the front door. But that would just be my request right now, is that we kind of reduce that visible security presence, because it doesn't create a welcoming environment. Thank you.
Dr. Hopes?
Yeah, I was just going back to the discussion that we had about, I was thinking about, and looking at the room, the area for like wheelchair accommodation and people who need to stand. And so I see we've got the gaps there, but I was just wondering if those chairs probably should, maybe if those chairs were removed, then we'd have that whole open area back there for wheelchairs and people who need to stand. I like the idea of limiting where people stand. And so if someone needs to stand and needs to be accommodated, if there was an area like we were talking about for wheelchair accommodation and people standing, that either that area, the only thing I was worried about that area is because isn't that where the AV guys go in and out?
They use the other door.
No?
Well, they use the outside door mostly.
Oh,
That
okay.
is to come in here, but
Okay.
they do exit to the hall.
But I thought that was a good idea, and I would like to see that. And to Mr. Kennedy's comments, I think in a way he's right. We had some extenuating circumstances, and I think as we have a more orderly room with regards to kind of like some of the activity, I think there was a time that I guess law enforcement felt we needed more because we had people jumping up in their seats and things like that. So if we limit standing, though, for those who need to stand in that back area, if they need to stretch their legs, they can go out and go down the hall and stretch their legs. But I think perhaps a second review by our security team and by law enforcement to in consideration of kind of like the new order in the room, where we limit where people stand and people are seated, that perhaps an assessment of what is needed for security can like be reassessed.
Mr. Minor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll speak about the back of the room where I think at least 2, maybe 3 chairs have been taken out, which were against the wall. I applaud that action on the part of the administration. And I think the purpose of it is to provide additional room for persons who need to use a wheelchair. They can go in there. There's enough room for wheelchairs and for persons to pass in front of them and to go into our broadcast area or to come out of it. I think that's very good. I think that addresses possible needs of those who have disabilities and anybody who comes in. And it also is an area where persons who, for whatever reason, need to, I would say medically, need to stand. They can stand without in any way impeding the view of someone who is sitting in those chairs without impeding ingress or egress, into that back room. So I think it's a very community-friendly, thing that the administration has done to let everybody know everybody is welcome. But there's certain arrangements we have to make that take into consideration of other people in the audience and safety. And it is, I think that what occurred then was a result of interpretation. It was said in broadcast that you can't stand And for safety reasons, and we had police, believing, if you're going to stand, you're going to have to leave, and then there was a resistance to that, and a lot of negative backflow, from that. I think it's very important, or one of the lessons I drew from all of that, is that we need to make very clear, to the public, to the police, about our rules. And I think at the very beginning of the meeting, that there should be announcements, by the chair, that if there's anyone who needs to stand up or something, is in the audience, we do have some room in the back where they would not impede the view of others, and please take advantage of that. We do believe it's in the interest of all that we do not allow standing in this auditorium. But if you feel compelled to stand, go back there. Otherwise, please remove yourself. That's not asking too much. But I don't think we've communicated that well. It should be on our website if people sign up for anything. It should be given to them in a hand notice if they come in. Let them know the rules, and we all know the rules. And if there is a problem, really, it's Madam Chair. It's your call about having people, removed, and that's important for everybody in the room, to understand. So there's not a mix-up on that, but it's understandable that there can be a mix-up. But I think we need to do a better job in communicating to the public the protocols. It's not designed to intimidate. It's not designed to squash. It's designed to provide safety for everyone, men, women, and children, those who like what we're doing or not like what we're doing. We have to have decorum in the conduct of these meetings. I think it was this morning or yesterday morning, I caught a little bit of the meeting of the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee, and toward the beginning of it, there was someone in the audience who got up and started talking and all sorts of things, and making a disturbance. And that person was let out of that hearing room. And I said, well, I've been in that room. It's not funny at all, but it's sometimes you have to have people to leave it if they're not abiding by the rules of decorum, to conduct the public business. It happened here. It happens in the House of Representatives. I'm going to leave you with the name of one person that you can go back and look in Google, and his name is Alvin M. Bentley, Bentley, Alvin M. Bentley. And you can look up what happened to him, and that was really maybe the first time that legislative bodies became sensitive to the public coming in and watching the proceedings. I'll jump to the chase. Alvin M. Bentley was a congressman who was the most severely wounded by shots coming from the gallery in the House of Representatives. This was about 1953, I believe. And at that time, the public could just go in and out, and there were people from the Puerto Rico who were very much in favor of statehood for Puerto Rico, and this is how they made a statement. They unleashed shots on the House of Representatives, and it was really questionable whether Alvin M. Bentley would survive, and he did. And I think since that time, legislatures throughout the country have become sensitive, as you'll find up in Tallahassee, and not just state House of Representatives, but also we are a legislative body, became sensitive to the needs that most people are really good and know the way to conduct themselves in a peaceful, orderly manner with decorum, but not everybody does. And it's because everybody doesn't do that that we have to take reasonable steps to inhibit that and protect everybody else that's there, including the people who play the role of Alvin M. Bentley, even on the local level. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Reverend Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to have a sign placed at the outer door of this room. I would like the sign to say 3 things. There is no standing allowed along the side walls in this room. There is no standing allowed in the aisles in this room. There is standing allowed only where it is permitted. And I would like a sign where that officer is standing right now to say, standing room only. Those are the 3 things that I would like to have see on a sign on the door as you come in here. If there's not a seat for you in here, and this doesn't have to be on the sign, you need to leave the room. If there's no room for you to stand where that officer is standing, you need to leave the room. The person who decides that will be our security person. Okay? The only other person that controls, as far as I'm concerned, decorum in this room is the chair. And I'm going to ask that before we try to take anybody's liberties away, I have no problem with an immediate recess. Whatever the incident is, whether you're talking, whether you're cursing, whether you disagree, whether you're clapping, and I want that to be in the discretion of the chair. And the last thing that I want is that anybody that works for the Manatee County School Board will not take any law enforcement action unless there is a direct threat to the board. And I know from experience that a direct threat constitutes more than just words. So somebody standing here accusing me of what I know is not true, somebody here trying to create a scene for the television producers and all that kind of stuff, that is not something that poses a direct threat to me, especially since we've already wanded everybody coming into this room. So I don't want to keep stewing around in things that do not help us bring the community together. And I think those things make it very clear that you have got to take some affirmative action that's designed to affect the safety and security of this board. That's all I got to say. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just to address, since we've made one go around, what I'm hearing is it sounds like we all agree that the expectation is you will remain seated. If you cannot do that for a medical reason, there's a space in the back of the room. I think that we probably could all agree on placing rules on the door. Maybe not, but I think that's an agreeable term, and labeling that space. I can, if the board would like, or if there's somebody else that would like to take this on, work on creating something that we say in the beginning of a meeting that clearly labels our expectations, whether it regards to standing or sitting, outbursts, anything else that we feel that we could encounter, so that the expectations are stated. If somebody would like to work on that, that's fine. If not, I'll work on it and I'll give it to the superintendent, so everybody, or give it to Mrs. Arajo, so that everybody can look at it and fine tune it. I'm no lawyer. Anyways, that's a consensus I'm hearing. Am I understanding everybody correctly? Okay. Dr. Hopes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is kind of in regards to Mr. Minor and Reverend Golden's comments, and I'll relate it with a story from yesterday. And I've been in and out of the Capitol for 35 years, and I've been in this one particular room as a member of the executive branch, and the reason why I'm telling the story is because there was a change for how you conduct yourself in that room, and there was a large dais, and I, after the meeting, as the senators were, gathering their papers, I went up to speak with one of the senators who had kind of spoken against our bill, the only one. And when I finished the conversation, I guess like the sergeant at arms came up to me and said that, we have a new rule this year, and in this room, the public is not to go up to the dais, and for now we're just letting everyone know, as a courtesy, kind of like a warning, and that's how it was handled. And so perhaps what the superintendent can do is, as we roll out these new policies and post the notice, kind of approach it the way that gentleman did with me, to inform me, which I was totally unaware, and I don't think I saw a sign. I think a sign's a really good idea. It was very courteous. I think he knows me, but then that's the way he handled it. It was quiet. It was not embarrassing. Obviously, I wasn't a threat, but he let me know in a courteous, in a courteous way of the new rules, and we're kind of giving people time to get used to it. And so I thought that was a very effective and considerate way to handle that situation. So, thank you.
Vice Chair Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to kind of gently disagree with an item Reverend Golden brought up. And he said that if the Director of Security sees an issue, that he should intervene, or in the future she. And I disagree with that somewhat, in that, as we've been talking about before, the chair is responsible for the running of the meeting. So I don't think we should have Director of Security or any school district staff doing anything unless directed to do so by the chair. Now, obviously, if there's law enforcement in the room, that's different. They have a totally different set of duties. If they feel they need to intervene on something, that's their business. But this is let me finish. As I kind of addressed with the superintendent a couple times, like, this is a meeting of the board and the superintendent. This is not a meeting of school district staff. So I think the board chair should be directing security personnel, and then the police can direct themselves, as they always do.
Mr. Minor, I think I saw your hand up.
My understanding of the rules of protocol and authority in the statutes with respect to the meetings of the school board is that authority rests with the chair of the board. If someone is to be removed, it is the chair who directs the removal of that person. Period. Okay.
I see, but he has not had a second turn, so let's, Mr. Golden, Reverend Golden.
I don't want us to get deeper into this. Somebody has to say enough is enough. Enough of trying to find reasons to perpetuate the negativity that exists between this board and certain segments of the community. I want to make peace today. If I am not directly threatened while sitting here in this seat, I do not want anybody protecting me, or in the name of protecting me, that they are going to create a chilling effect on people. Now, we're all reasonable people here. We know, and even if there are unreasonable people in our midst, we are reasonable. And so I have eminent faith in this chair, as I did in the last chair, to do her best to make sure that we maintain a meeting environment. And when that is done, that's why I suggest the first line is to recess the meeting. because she can do that without asking anybody and without telling anybody and without asking any help. She has a gavel in her hand. We can recess this meeting, and that meeting is recessed. The second thing that I'm concerned about is that there are people who come to our meetings to be provocative. And I am tired of us playing into that provocation. That's unseemly, it's unprofessional on our part. And so we have to take our egos, our tempers, all of the things that make us individuals from this side and set it aside. So I'm saying, unless I feel like you are coming to directly cause me harm, whatever else you do is on you. That's something that you're doing for effect. Maybe you really believe it. Maybe you really intend it. I don't know. But I do not want any employee of this school system, in the name of protecting me, to create more problems between me and the people that elected me. Because they all did. And I would expect that we would have enough law enforcement maturity to know Reverend Golden is being threatened, and he doesn't even know it. But you don't threaten me standing on the wall. And you're not going to threaten me because you don't, because you boo, and even though we say you can't boo. That's not a threat to me. It may hurt my feelings and make me feel bad and all that kind of stuff. But that's not what this is about. All you're doing is embarrassing yourself to all of the people that are looking on the TV. And you're trying to get me to join you in that embarrassment. Not going to do it. Not anymore. Not another day. And I'm going to pray that the first line of defense that we have as a board is that our chair will say, we're in recess until order is restored. It's not her duty to restore order. It's not her duty to even say anything other than we're in recess because we don't have order. That's all. That's enough for me. And when order is restored, the meeting will resume. But all of this parsing and they say this and I say this and I'm in charge of the meeting. Everybody knows who's in charge of the meeting. The chair's in charge of the meeting. The question is, how is the meeting conducted? So no more. No more throwing people out, no more having people arrested because you can. What we're going to do, I pray, is that this chair will just adjourn the meeting and that law enforcement, not our staff, law enforcement, this is security. I heard something today I hadn't really thought about. So, we might have bomb threats. Okay, that's a real deal. And I'd like somebody to know somebody here's got experience to do that. But you walking in here with a knife or you walking in here with a gun, that starts out there. We got people out there trying to do that. You shouldn't be able to get in here and all this Godfather. Wasn't that the movie where the guy went in the bathroom got the gun from out behind him?
With a horse or something.
Yeah, with a horse is here and all that kind of stuff. This ain't make believe. This is real life. And some people come in here, they really are upset. And they can be upset. I can take that. I can stand that. I'm not afraid of your being upset. You can do that. So let's all calm down. Let's just all back up a minute and just calm down. That's all. Thank you. Is that my second time? Did I press the button? Can I press the?
Everybody's had two turns.
Can I press the button again?
Do you need to?
No. It's a new thing. I'm just trying to.
Okay, everyone's had two turns around.
Okay.
And in the interest of time, let's be quick about it because we're butting up to our 5 o'clock time where we like to adjourn.
I'm going to be quick. So what I was just going to say is what I had heard Reverend Golden say is kind of with the exception. Reverend Golden was relating to someone, people who are standing on the sidewalls or standing in the aisles, that it would be the person responsible for safety and security of the boardroom to ask those folks to move over to the designated standing area. And that was it. And then he went on to say that he did not expect an employee of the school district to do any more than that. and that it would be law enforcement that dealt with that. So, Mr. Kennedy, that's what I heard Reverend Golden say, that his limitation on our own security within this room was that they could ask people who were standing in the aisles or standing on the sidewalls to go to the designated standing area. He was not.
If I may, I still think that's the job of the chair. I think I'm in the minority here, and that's fine. But to be clear, I was saying that any direction to the audience or for security personnel to step in, whomever they may be, should come from the chair.
Well, okay. Well, my position is that if this board adopts that policy that we don't want people standing on the sidewalls or in the aisles, then I think that is a very basic, that's a very basic function for the person responsible for the people sitting where they're supposed to be sitting and standing where they're supposed to be sitting. I don't think the chair needs to use her time to say, you're not supposed to be standing on the sidewall. I mean, I think she can conduct the business of the board. That's something pretty basic. And I'm okay with whoever's responsible for safety and security to quietly go up to somebody standing on the sidewall and ask them to go to the standing area.
Did y'all shoot down my idea about the sign outside?
No, we didn't.
we
No, we
supported it.
didn't.
Oh, okay.
No. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Minor.
I agree with Mr. Kennedy. If, the chair needs assistance to carry out the enforcement, in a sense, of proper conduct in this room, then it's the chair to ask the assistance of law enforcement. It's the chair who has that authority. And that's the statute, that's the way it is. Now, you try to exercise it with restraint, but one thing that I disagree with Reverend Golden is we're not just trying to protect Reverend Golden. We're trying to protect everyone here. We're also taking an oath to conduct the people's business here. And when anyone comes in here, if they want to put on an act or try to disturb things, they are interfering with our performing the sworn oath we have taken. And that is not to be tolerated. We don't let them determine when there's going to be peace in this room. If they are not going to conduct themselves in a mature, orderly way, then they don't belong here. And they should be asked to leave, and if they don't leave, they should be escorted out, and if they resist, they should be arrested. And that's the rule that they need to understand, that they're welcome here. They will have opportunity to speak in an orderly fashion, but if they're going to get up and try to make a scene and speak when they're not authorized, they're in the wrong place. And then it's up to the chair to determine whether they should, it merits directing their removal or not. But it may be a warning that, I'm sorry, you're going to have to restrain yourself. The next time you do this, you're going to be having to leave, whatever. But it's up to the chair to maintain the decorum necessary for orderly transaction of the legislative business for which we have been elected.
All right, Mr. Golden, I'm giving you 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I am not wanting to serve on a board that needs the police department to maintain decorum. I have much more confidence in the chair than that. And I believe that the chair of the board should have a lot of arrows at their disposal to maintain order. All I'm simply saying is that the first arrow simply needs to be adjourned. That does recess. That does not escalate anything. It doesn't take anything away. And sometimes it really takes a lot out of your pride and your ego and your manhood, womanhood, whatever it is, to take the lesser road. Because I have seen the outcome of not falling prey to escalation. Some things are designed to provoke you. You just have to admit that. And I would hope that you would be a better help to us, not being exposed to unnecessary provocation. Not going forward. Because this ain't no plantation. People can come in here and they can speak, and they don't have to speak like we think they ought to speak. They don't have to do that. And they don't have to act like we think they ought to act. All they have to do, according to this, is to come and exercise their right to be heard. Now, whether they're too loud or whatever, you know, we got to get away from that. That's just all there is to that. That day is past and gone. So I beg you, let us start with that. We are in recess because the room is out of order, and you can do that. You don't need to ask anybody that.
What do you think?
I think we should adjourn.
Good answer.
Without objection.
Yeah.